The workday was coming to an end. Ben loosened his tie, exhaled deeply, and called the secretary. "Helen, if there are any papers left to sign, bring them over. I want to go home early today." A minute later, a pretty woman came through the door and placed 2 thin folders on the boss's desk. "Here they are. By the way, the owner of the company, Mr. Taylor, called and asked to meet him tomorrow. He's flying in at lunchtime and wants to inspect the company's financial activities in person." Signing the documents, the director muttered grudgingly, "He's always unsatisfied with something. Okay, arrange a car to the airport for him and book a table at the restaurant." The secretary wrote it all down and left the office. Left alone again, Ben looked at his watch and began to get ready. There was a paper heart, made by a boy, on the shelf near lots of folders. Taking it in his hands, Ben remembered the circumstances under which he had received such a gift and smiled. Then Ben threw his coat over his shoulders and left the office. Already in the car, he remembered the paper heart again. That was 2 years ago. Ben accidentally saw on television the story of a boy who needed an expensive operation. Everyone who cared and invited to send a brief message with the amount of the donation. Without thinking twice, Ben paid for the treatment in full. Soon the boy had the surgery, and he made a heart with his own hands and gave it to Ben for the memory. Passing by the park, Ben noticed how happy parents were talking together with their children. Ben himself still had no family and no real happiness, but he had the money to compensate somehow for his lack. Ben was going home, but at a traffic light he turned the other way. Half an hour later his car stopped outside his mother's house. Ben went to the front door, but as if anticipating her son's appearance, Mrs. Lewis opened the door herself. "Son, why didn't you call? At least I would have baked a cake. Well, come on in. Don't just stand in the doorway." Ben went into the kitchen and sat down at the table. "Do you know what I'm most afraid of, Mum?" Mrs. Lewis looked at him with a perplexed look and replied, "I don't know. You seem to have everything you could want. You've been working toward that goal and got what you deserve." Pouring himself some tea, Ben took a small sip from his mug and said, "Loneliness scares me the most. If you're gone, what will I do then? Count the money and thus calm myself down? You know, there's a kind of stiffness in my chest. I feel that all my emotions have sunk somewhere into the abyss." Mrs. Lewis hugged her son by the shoulders and said sympathetically, "Son, every man makes his own happiness, and I pray that you will meet your one and only. It's just that you're obsessed with work. Yes, it helps you live comfortably, but money will never replace love, kindness, and warmth of heart." Remembering that the owner of the company was coming in tomorrow, Ben decided to consult. "Do you think, Mum, that maybe we should tell him that there needs to be an expansion of the staff at the production facility? People are working to the limit of their capacities. I don't think it would do him any harm to put some of the money back into the company. It's all in your hands, son. You've got a bright head and it's never let you down before. I think the head of the company will understand when he sees the results." "Okay, Mum. I'm going home, and you call me if you need anything. And thanks for the tips. Love you, Mum." After walking him to the door, Mrs. Lewis kissed him on the cheek and softly said, "Take care of yourself, son, and always listen to your heart." All the way home, Ben tried to grasp the meaning of his mother's words, and it seems that she gave some kind of advice, and at the same time it was not clear where the truth was and how to find it. Going through the papers at home, Ben was preparing for Mr. Taylor's arrival. He had already matured a plan of how to pull the head of the company to his side. After all, no matter how you look at it, and the company must continue to develop, but without additional infusions of money, it would be difficult to do so. The next morning, Ben woke up with the final idea to talk to Mr. Taylor. As he had asked, the secretary sent a company car for him at the airport in due time. Ben, in order not to lose time, decided to arrive early at the place of their meeting. But there was an accident on the way, so the traffic was turned around for a while along a detour road. After driving 2 blocks, Ben ended up next to the children's hospital. Standing at a stoplight, Ben noticed a crying boy at the gate of the cancer hospital, and it seemed to him that it was the same boy he had once saved. The man parked, got out of the car, and realized that it was a different child. At that time, a woman came up to the boy and took him by the hand. Ben was about to drive on, but he heard from the corner of his ear that she was reassuring her son. "Everything will be all right, Sonny. We only have a little bit left to collect. Be patient. I know you're tired, but we don't have enough money yet." Even to an inexperienced person, it was clear that they were talking about some expensive treatment. Ben's mind recalled memories from his childhood. His mother had cared for him in the same way during his serious illness, and only thanks to the help of an unknown philanthropist, Ben was cured. Mrs. Lewis had never been able to find out the name of the saviour of her son, the kind-hearted man who gave him a chance to live. It was only a 10-minute drive to the restaurant, but Ben abruptly turned the car around and raced in the opposite direction. He arrived at the meeting only an hour later and almost ran over the head of the company, who was about to leave already. "There you are, Ben. You've been a bit unpunctual. Are you all right?" "I'm sorry, Mr. Taylor. I got caught in traffic. Let's go back to the table and discuss the issues that have accumulated." The owner of the company smiled ironically, but headed back to the restaurant. After ordering, Ben pronounced, "The thing is, Mr. Taylor, that I would like to discuss with you the development of the company. Let me tell you right away, this will require additional investment." Mr. Taylor stopped him with a gesture. "I am aware of what you have in mind, but I have my doubts. You ask for a new investment, but all of a sudden you sell your shares in the company, and for a substantial sum. It seems to me that things are not going very well, and you are planning to escape from a sinking ship. It seems to me, Ben, that there should be no secrets between us. Why did you do such a thing?" Ben was surprised that Mr. Taylor found out so quickly that he had sold his shares, but there was nothing to do, and blushing, he told Mr. Taylor that he had made a donation to the children's hospital. The owner of the company was surprised. "That's commendable, and I'd even say it's quite unexpected. But actually, I was hesitant to invest additionally in production. But now I see before me not just an ordinary top manager, but an intelligent and honest man with a big heart. Oh, I just remembered a long time ago events from my life and decided to help. That's it." Without hiding anything, he told the man how he had saved a little boy 2 years ago by paying for his expensive treatment, and how now, on his way to a meeting, he saw a woman with a child outside the hospital. Her son's head was completely bald, without a single hair, and it didn't take a specialist to figure out the disease. Mr. Taylor listened to him without interrupting, and when Ben finished, he said, "You did the right thing, Ben, and we should be proud of people like you. Well, if you have a plan to expand the company, I'm ready to discuss it right now, and in the future. If there is a dilemma about help, do not hesitate and act on your heart's desire." Mr. Taylor stayed one more day and then went back to the company's headquarters. Overwhelmed by joy in the good deed he had done, Ben arrived at his mother's house and told her all about it. "Now, son, you must remember what happiness is. After all, for that child, what was the most important thing? To live without illness and to be happy every day he lives. And you made his dream come true. You could say that. You gave him a second chance. After Mr. Taylor's leaving, Ben began to do a reorganization in the company, but he could not have imagined how his desire to help that boy outside the hospital would turn out. In addition to the money from the sold shares, he also had an impressive asset of money accumulated over several years. Ben planned to spend it on buying real estate abroad so that he and his mother could move there, but instead the money was spent on treating children and buying rare medicines abroad. And soon an unbelievable event happened. Upon arriving at the office one morning, Ben saw a heart drawn in paint on the pavement in front of the company building. Immediately his secretary Helen came out to meet him. "Sorry to meet you here, Ben, but there are many people with children inside." Ben walked up the stairs and found himself in the reception area with an extraordinary scene. The women were holding flowers and their children were standing next to him. With joyful shouts they began to embrace him. "Thank you. You're a real hero." This was not the kind of start of the day Ben had been used to, but it was filled with great pleasure. Soon after that he was invited on television, and for a few days Ben was in the spotlight of the entire city. After that Mr. Taylor called him and said that after everyone knew about his deed, the company's shares increased. Ben, on the other hand, was happy about something wholly different. He had helped more than one child to stay healthy, and suddenly that touched him to the core, and his emotions finally awakened in him. And soon he paid closer attention to his secretary and proposed to her. Helen said yes, and now Ben no longer thought about being alone.